Hey, welcome to our ThinkWell podcast. I'm really excited today because we have a special guest. This is actually my life partner, Laura, and she's typically sitting beside me. We are both talking and, discussing different topics. But today she is going to be the expert, well, she's going to be on the expert seat, and I am going to be interviewing her. I'm really fascinated by the type of work she does, and so I want to get to know a little bit more about, some of the details of what she does so well. Laura is a lifelong student of Eastern philosophies and the visionary behind TriDosha Transformation Coaching. With over a decade of experience in ancient healing practices, she empowers individuals, especially women, navigating midlife transitions to reconnect with their natural rhythms and age with grace. Her journey began in 2009 when she became a certified Hatha Yoga instructor. Since then, she has guided thousands of hours of yoga for hundreds of students, offering practices that support physical vitality and mental clarity. Driven by a deep desire to expand her understanding of holistic well-being, Laura went on to become a certified Ayurveda Health Coach, face yoga instructor, and an Ayurvedic Skin and Beauty specialist. Her coaching integrates Ayurvedic wisdom, personalized nutrition, and yoga to support each individual's unique constitution. She also creates nourishing meals and recipes, guides women in natural skincare rituals, and teaches face yoga to promote graceful aging without invasive procedures. Now in her 40s, hard to believe, Laura is passionate about helping women move away from societal pressure towards Botox and plastic surgery. Instead, she offers holistic wellness packages that support natural beauty, radiant health, and empowerment during the transformative midlife phase. Through TriDosha Transformation Coaching, Laura is redefining what it means to age well, offering a path to self-love, balance, and lasting vitality. So Laura, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks.
I can't wait to hear more about your journey. And maybe we can get started there. What got your attention about, ancient practices? And what is it that, that speaks to you about these ancient practices like Ayurveda and other healing modalities?
Great question. So I actually was very self-destructive in majority of my life. I was very much practicing self-destructive ways. I had no self-control for most of the part. I was obese. I just was not a happy individual. And it took me some time to get to where I am. And I think one of the things that really triggered this more was when my mom became sick. And I realized, okay, there's got to be a natural approach to help. And so I ended up learning, taking the teacher training course for yoga, Hatha Yoga, just to see if I can help her with movement. And it was so beneficial for me, for my mom, and my intentions were never to work at a studio. I just wanted to help people with ailments and illnesses. And I ended up working at a studio, helping a friend while she was away, and I just kept doing that, and I really enjoyed it. And then from there, I learned a little bit more about Ayurveda, which really spoke to me. I was attending a holistic nutrition program in Mississauga, where I used to live. Excuse me. And it was very scientific, and I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. And when I took the course of Ayurveda, the introduction course, that just opened up everything for me, because everything after that made sense as the Ayurvedic approach, where there's 3 different types of constitutions. There's fire, there's water, ether, and then there's earth. So going forward in that program, I found myself saying, well, yeah, that's a pitta, that's a vata, that's a kapha. Like, all this made sense to me, and I just couldn't move past that. So I took some time after that. I got into a car accident and had a concussion. I couldn't continue with that program, but I decided after, I felt much better to do the Ayurvedic Health Counselor program, and I loved it. I learned so much about everything to do with not just Ayurveda and the doshas, but daily routines and how important they are. And I integrated that into my lifestyle. And then from there, I kept going a little deeper, with the philosophy, with face yoga, Ayurvedic skincare and makeup. I really love the more natural approach to everything you put on your body, your face. And so back in 2008, I think it was, where I started, and I graduated 2009, so it was about a year-long program that, opened up my love for yoga and Ayurveda. And actually, when I was little, I remember, and I think I told you this, when I was really little, my mom and my dad, we lived in, and my older sister, we lived in a building for newcomers to Canada. So there was a lot of people from all over the world, which was really cool to see. And when we lived there was a lot of women that were from India, and they all had saris and bangles. I just remember being so fascinated by them and the smell of the food. I always joke that in a past life I was probably Indian. So I just always had a affinity towards the culture and the philosophy.
That's nice. I mean, it's such a journey, right? And we typically, something pushes us in a particular direction that we're not expecting.
Yeah.
So maybe this is not something you were planning all your life, but it just happened that way. I often say that, when we plan change, typically that ends up showing in a way of, making some changes, creating some habits, achieving some goals. So it ends up looking like achievements. But, the change that we are not expecting to happen, those things that happen in life, like an accident or an illness or something like that, those definitely, those are changes as well, but obviously unwanted and unexpected. And they end up not just, getting us to achieve stuff, but to transform, right? So it becomes a transformation. And so it's a much deeper thing, because now you're developing skills to improve your resilience, basically, right? Skills that you wouldn't otherwise develop, right? Because you're forced to do it. But because I know you and I know how passionate you are about food, and you mentioned food there too. I love that you bring it all together, because it's really, I guess, relatively easy for people to say, well, you should be eating this, and more based on the theory of nutrition, for example, eat this because it's good for you, try not to eat this, stay away from that sort of thing. But you don't only just, provide that information, but you actually put it to practice and make the stuff. I mean, I'm the beneficiary of your amazing, baking and cooking, and you mentioned Indian food there, amazing flavors. So what's interesting about this, and where I'm going with this, is that you're able to incorporate also the aspect of beauty, for example, skin and so on, right? Which is also something that typically in the West is separate from everything else, right? You can be intelligent, but being smart is or it's being smart, but being beautiful, it's completely separate, and so when you bring it all together, it just, maybe I like you to talk more about that, if you don't mind. How do you bring it all together, and what makes you bring it all together?
Yeah, great question. So one thing that I noticed, so before I started practicing yoga and learning more in depth about yoga, again, I was self-destructive. I was eating a lot of meat. I was, drinking a lot, just eating a lot and drinking a lot of bad stuff. And this wasn't even a choice. It was just, I started practicing more and more and more. It became a daily habit for me. And then I couldn't eat meat. I couldn't drink alcohol. I just found myself in the natural cleanse. So that led to me going vegan, going vegetarian, and like most people who go that route, they end up having more packaged food, things that aren't really the healthiest. So I realized, no, I can simplify this and make my own, food from whole foods. So that really opened up the journey for me to take the holistic nutrition program too, which I really loved. I learned so much about food in itself and the benefits and, everything that we need to stay nourished. And then from there, it was just, I'm practicing yoga. I'm feeling so much better. I'm eating healthier. It's, I started to feel a lot more self-love, which I didn't practice for since I can remember. I didn't know what that was like, right? So I always just felt like I want to share this with everyone. So I started to, make meal plans for clients and, outside of the box, as you know, clients will be like, oh, I heard keto is great. It's not for everyone, right? So just curating meals, practices too, and with Ayurveda, daily routines. And then from there, it just opened up more because I don't wear a lot of makeup. Like I'll just wear a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but like I don't cake on makeup. And as you know, I always see a lot of women my age, even younger or older, that are putting Botox in their face, and they're doing a lot of procedures on their face. And I start to think about like, wow, we all have so much beauty within ourselves, and unfortunately societal standards are telling us you have to look this way, you can't age, you have to do that, you have to do that. I want to help women be able to show up in the world and show up naturally and confidently. It's inevitable, we're all going to age. It's just how you age, right? You can age gracefully. You can still have a beautiful natural glow. You could still, just like with movement with your body, you could shape your body, lifting weights, running, yoga. You could do the same with your face. So that's why I took this incredible intensive face yoga program to learn a little bit more. And I've noticed like a difference with my face and with clients' face. So it all tied in for me. It was more like, when you show up in the world, how do you want to show up? Not just about how you look, but how you feel and what you do overall with the choices, right? Every day is a choice. So, you could choose to have, an unhealthy breakfast and start your day like that and perpetuate into unhealthy eating habits for the day because it's a cheat day, or what time to eat, what to eat, what yoga postures are good for you, what your constitution is. And that's something that's really important, knowing what your dosha is, which is in essence, your two major elements. We all have all five, right? Just knowing the elements that are stronger for you and knowing how to navigate food, exercise, breathing,
so
meditation.
There's a dominant constitution.
Yeah, so in Ayurveda...
So for example, just to be clear for those who don't know, so I would be fire and air and all those things, they'll all be part of me, but one would be more dominant than the other.
Yeah, so with Ayurveda, we're all born with all five elements. So we have earth, we have water, we have fire, we have air, we have ether. And so Kapha, for instance, which I am, is water and earth, so it's heavy. Then you have Vata, which is ether and air, which is light and always moving. Then you have fire, which is you, and water, which is, fire energy. So depending on what you are, again, it's not one size fits all. So you're not, okay, a Pitta, so now you have to eat this, right? You have to do that. You have to meditate this way. You have to do these breathing techniques. It's never one size fits all. So it's really knowing your client, knowing their prakriti, which is known as their the doshas that are stronger for them, and knowing their vikriti, which is their imbalance, and being able to balance it out with food, with yoga. So that's really important.
So dosha stands for constitutions.
Correct.
The same thing. Okay.
Yeah.
So the translation. Yeah, that is fascinating, and I can actually relate because it just makes sense when you explain to me that I'm fire, but I also have to come with the element of air or wind. I've always had so much respect for wind. And so I can totally identify with fire because I am the most impatient person. I want things done right away, and I have to move. So for me, sitting down for 15 minutes, it's beyond torture.
Yeah.
And I have to be moving. And so that definitely is fire, right? But fire is fueled by, oxygen as well, so air, and so that has to be there. And just on a daily kind of daily basis, right? Going about my day, I need to have, I need to burn that fire, but I also need to have that. And I complain about the weather all the time. There's not a breeze running right now, so I feel pretty bad. And so those two are there. So it really makes sense. I can really see it. And I can see too how both my exercise and my nutrition should also kind of follow that in order to be in harmony, right? So something that, for example, I cannot tolerate spices very much because that adds to the fire. Without the counter, which would be air in this case, so it has to be balanced. If I'm going to go with, some type of spice, right? It has to come also with something that will also make it a little bit more fresh. So let's say, for example, cucumber, something that's cooling. Cucumber with, I don't know, with pepper or whatever, right? So it's really cool to understand just from that point of view, just for the perspective of enjoying your food, but also how that's going to either exacerbate or it's going to facilitate the digestion of your food and how you're going to metabolize that and use it as energy, right?
Yeah, and with Ayurveda, it's not just what you eat and what you digest. It's what you're eating, how you're eating, the time you're eating, the environment around you. When you're eating, it's also how you assimilate, how you digest, it's a whole, it doesn't just end at what you're going to make and what you're going to eat, right? And so the imbalances would be, we'll take you for instance, being more fire and water, so being more of a pitta, but you do have the vata. I would say you're even a duodosha, you've got both, right? Pittas, if you were to eat for even a day, deep fried, spicy food for all 3 meals, and you were to eat or drink a lot of alcohol just for one day, you would notice that your impatience would be 0. You would be very moody. You'd get impulsive. You'd get angry. So that goes to show. And if you didn't move, so let's just say
I think
one day you just sit down and watch, I don't know, series after series on Netflix, and you're eating deep fried food all day and spicy food, you'd become, you would not be okay. I could see, you would just be really upset at the world. So those are little things that most people aren't aware. They just think, oh, I want to lose weight, I'm going to do the keto, I'm going to try Ozempic. It's not about the quick fix. It's knowing sustainably where you were when you were born to where you're at, to finding that fine balance.
See, that's important because a lot of us, of course, we want the magic pill, right, or the quick fix. But everything is a process. We talked about that last time. It's a journey, right? And so it's no wonder that as you're getting older, you begin to, at least, just from a very simplistic perspective, you get to see what foods upset your stomach and what foods, kind of go with you, right? So even if you just put it like that without having the background of, Ayurveda or science and explaining, why that's the case, but at least, you learn from trial and error, right? It's like, okay, I won't touch that food anymore because it doesn't make me feel good, and I'll gravitate towards these other foods, right? But having that understanding, and this is the cool thing, that you can save people time and a lot of pain, because when it comes to food, really, we're always struggling, right? It is always between making the right choice and being forced to make any choice when it comes to the pressures of time and or lack of understanding. What I love about this, and I want to get to talk about maybe science and all that, but what I love about a system like Ayurveda, an ancient system, is that when you talk about science, for example, I can recite an entire book about nutrition, and the research and all that, and how this affects your hormones, and I can get into the cellular part of it and all that. All that is great information, but when you are doing something like Ayurveda, you're actually providing a kind of a plan for people that it's something that they can test immediately and it starts to work for them, right?
Absolutely.
Rather
Yeah.
than saying, for example, oh, I've heard that, like you said, I've heard that creatine is good. I wonder if I should take that. I heard that this is good. I wonder if I take it. Their science shows that, it's, such amount of protein is good. And so it's great to know the science, but also when we just go with the science alone, we're doing a lot of, in many cases, we can do a lot of damage, right? Like if I'm
Yeah.
consuming more protein than I should or too little protein. But this is the cool balance that an ancient system like this brings, right?
Yeah, and I do feel like it was almost a blessing in disguise when I got into this car accident and I had a concussion. I couldn't continue with the holistic nutrition program that I was attending. But even before that, as I mentioned earlier, I was learning the basics of the fundamentals of nutrition, supplements, minerals, everything that we need. And then after that was the Ayurveda course, which was pretty soon into the beginning of the program that I learned this. And after that, we were learning about the blood type diet, the this diet, the that diet, and it was all Pitta, Vata, Kapha. It's all, to me, that just made sense. But, no, it's not Ayurveda, it's this. Yeah, I know, but you're explaining Ayurveda. So this, recent finding of the blood type diet, it's essentially a Pitta, a Vata, a Kapha. Right. So, yeah, I find it really fascinating. To me, so my journey too, I was always chubby and overweight, and I became obese in high school. I was very uncomfortable. I was very angry at the world, again, self-destructive. And I didn't know, all I cared about was to lose weight. And I know I mentioned this, a couple episodes in the past too. All I cared about was being skinny. That was my goal. I didn't care if I was starving myself, bulimia, anorexia, over, working out, which I did. I was very self-destructive. And after, learning about yoga and practicing and it becoming part of my life, I started to learn how to love myself. And that came with food too, where now, even at age 47, I don't care about that. I care about getting stronger, being able to, keep up on a hike, being able to run, being able to lift weights, feeling good. I don't, for me, losing weight is a side effect. It's not about that, right? And that's what I try to tell clients and friends, because till this day I have friends that are like, no, I'm going to do this protein shake diet and I'm just going to have this for 2 weeks and I'm going to lose weight. And it's again, that's a quick fix.
See, this is why I think, again, I love science. I mean, I went to university. Mm-hmm. I believe in science, of course. What am I talking about? I shouldn't even have to say it. This is the thing, right? I have a degree in political science, right? It is a science, aside from, philosophy. But where I have an issue with it is it can explain many things, but it doesn't really provide you, a guide for you that's a personalized guide, right? And also it tends to separate everything, or at least our effort to try to apply it into to the real world. How do we do that, right? And so again, it's a lot of good information, but it's not a guide that's been designed for you, let's say, right? So something like Ayurveda does that. But the other point too is that alienation you're talking about, that people are, like in the case of yourself, right, where you're trying to find yourself, but you keep running away from yourself even more through, self-harm, that sort of thing, and so finding a system that brings it all together, it's really cool. And so this is why I wanted to ask you about the connection between yoga and Ayurveda, because a lot of people now practice yoga and they take it for granted that yoga is a good thing, right? Nobody's going to question it, right? And those that say, well, show me the science behind that. There's plenty of science to show that yoga it's not only good for your body, but it's good for your brain, your mind. It's good for relaxation. It's good for longevity, for vitality, for quality of life, and everything else like that, right? Maybe we can talk about that too, because I'd love to find out about what Hatha Yoga really means. But maybe we can go first with the connection between Ayurveda and yoga.
Great. Yeah. So with yoga, it's everyone knows yoga as a physical, but, you always hear about mind, body, soul connection. which there's obviously a lot truth to that. It's the sister science of Ayurveda. So Ayurveda is the preventative healthcare system from ancient India, and it's been around, guesstimating, over 5,000 years, and yoga is a part of it. So with Ayurveda, they don't focus on symptoms. It's not, okay, what are you feeling today? Let's try to figure it out. They focus on the whole individual. So mentally, physically, emotionally.
Like yoga, right?
If so it's all
practice yoga the way it should be practiced.
Yeah. So, yoga itself is, yes, the union of all those, but it's not necessarily the physical. A lot of people think it's the postures, the asanas. It's not. Yoga is actually the form of meditation, getting to the place of meditation. So I studied under the Patanjali yogi, and his teachings were you practice your Hatha Yoga. So it's a form of 108 postures that you're welcome to do all of them if you like in a day, but taking those that you need based on your physical needs, and then from there you do your pranayamas, your mudras. So it's all about energetic connections. It's all about your breathing. So there's so many different forms of pranayamas that you could do out there to stay cool, to stay warm, to stay hydrated, to relieve stress, to energize yourself. So after you're done that, that's where the meditation comes in, which is yoga. So the meditation comes in where you have a lot of time to self-reflect, which is really important, right? We've talked about this before, where people are so busy, they're so distracted, they don't have time to self-reflect and see where they're at, where they want to be, where they need to be, right? And so, yeah, that's where yoga comes in, and Ayurveda is basically telling us, okay, you were born. Let's just say someone that was born a Vata, so they're air and ether. They like to move around a lot, but they're super anxious. Why? Because now they're eating a lot of airy foods like popcorn, a lot of cold sodas, a lot of cold drinks, a lot of cold foods. A person that's a Vata, air and ether, they're constantly moving. They're very, very lean, either super tall or super short. Again, these are all just generic descriptions, not all one size fits all, but someone that's a Vata. So if you continue eating this way, you're constantly moving, you're constantly jogging, you're anxious. So you're building up that anxiety. So someone that's, a Vata, they'll tend to become super anxious. They'll become paranoid sometimes. They won't be able to stay warm. Their extremities are always cold. So, the idea with Ayurveda is opposites attract. So someone who's imbalanced with the Vata to the point where it's not even their Prakriti anymore, it's elevated. You can offer, warm meals. Make sure you have a schedule, because Vatas tend to be, there's no schedule. They're always on the fly. So having a schedule. With a Vata, you want them to have a grounding yoga practice. So having a vinyasa flow where you're constantly going is not good for them. And of course, most Vatas say, I hate that kind of yoga. Yeah, you do, because you want to keep going, you want to keep moving. But again, with Ayurveda, it's opposites attract. So you want to ground yourself. You want to eat more grounding meals, something like, sweet potato stew with lamb, or something that's grounding, right? And, Vatas, they definitely nourish themselves with meat. And so that's, even though I have my way of living with no meat in my diet, I don't impose that on my clients ever, right? Because I know, you're an imbalanced Vata, you need some flesh in your nourishment. So, and then you offer them a very calming yoga, a very calming meditation. They have to follow a schedule. And that's the great thing about Ayurveda too. It's not necessarily just what you eat, your yoga practice, it's the time. The Richicharya, which is the daily, that's the seasonal routine. The Dinacharya, which is the daily routine, is essential, right? So it's what time you wake up. So it sounds very, very strict, like if you're this, you have to wake up at this time. But essentially with Ayurveda, it's known that you want to wake up at least 40 minutes before the sunrise, so you can wash up and you can prepare yourself for your meditation. And while you're doing your sun salutations or whatever it is, whatever practice you're doing, the sun is rising with you. And then from there, the time that you're going to eat, what you're going to eat, it's really important. Abhyanga, which is a beautiful form of oil massage, that's really important. There's so many different things that you could do with Ayurveda, so their daily routines are really important. I remember when I first started learning about Ayurveda, I thought, I have to wake up at 4 a.m. to do all this. Like, how am I going to do this? I can't sleep, right? But the more and more you practice, the more and more it's just second nature, right? And that's, something that you touched upon earlier was, and we talked about too in the past, was quick fix. You have to do the work. You have to do the work. Like, as much as you want to reach for that injection or you want to reach for that pill or that shake, that's going to promise you're going to wake up the next day the person you want to look like and be. It's not ideal. Like, that's another thing about yoga and Ayurveda. You go deep, you go to the core of issues. So I always suggest to clients, have a therapist too, because a lot comes up, a lot. Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to let people into like a little secret here. The thing of being with you every day is that, when we do things like people watch, for example, everybody's into that, right?
We love people watching.
Patio, and people go, oh, I love going there because they just sit there and watch people. They go to a game and they're not even interested in baseball, whatever it is, but they go, people watching and stuff like that. And usually that's a very judgmental thing. So it might be a form of therapy. Like, look at that guy's an asshole, or look at this person like this and that, right? Or you admire people, wow, they're so good looking, or they look so, so relaxed. And that's very superficial, right? And it's very judgmental. But I love because you always go like, oh, that person is probably a Bata, or that person is probably a, a Pitta and all that. And I've gotten into that too. Now when I see somebody, I go, because sometimes you're comparing yourself to that person. Oh my God, am I as hyper as that person? Or am I as loud as that person? Oh my God. But so, I love how you have a way of saying, and it's pretty accurate, right? Can you go on, talk a little bit about that? Like, how do you?
Yeah.
No, obviously, you would need to assess somebody. They would need to
of
come
course,
into a consult with you. You have to ask them a questionnaire and stuff like that. But you can kind of assume certain things that may be pretty more or less accurate when you're looking at somebody, right? Like the way they walk or talk, for example.
Oh, absolutely, and that's the great thing about Ayurveda. There's a certain walk. That's a Vata, a Pitta, and a Kapha. We all have different mannerisms, the way we talk. So anyways, this is why I'm convinced I must have been Indian in a past life, because when I started the course with Ayurveda, even my teacher said, I'm really surprised, Laura, because you pick up, like, you can actually see someone and know their constitution without them saying anything. And for me, it's obviously when someone shows up, you see them physically. Are they a little heavier like me? That's probably a kapha, but is it how they were brought into this world, their prakriti, or is it a vikriti, which is like an imbalance, right? So there's a difference, right? How they talk. Right. Vatas are they talk really fast, and they just I can't even keep up with them. I can't even imitate them. So you see how a person talks. A pitta, they're very sharp and very to the point when they talk. A kapha like me, we're slow. We talk slow. Our tone is not super high or super, it's monotone almost, right? So, I always pick up on that. I like to people watch, and I'll say, oh, yeah, she's definitely a Vata, but it looks like there's a bit of Pitta imbalance because I could see the acne. And I'm not judging. I'm just saying, this person has some acne, so they're probably eating deep fried foods. They're probably not, doing this, doing that. So it's just, for me, it's fun. I enjoy it. I enjoy it.
Yeah, certainly. But also, it's an eye-opener, because for me, for example, to know my dominant constitution, then it explains a lot of things, right? And I don't feel like something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Because, Western, the idea of, looking at symptoms, as you say, right?
Yeah.
It's always what's wrong with you, let's fix it, right?
Yeah.
Even if we don't want to put it that way. So for me, what's wrong with me? Why am I so active? Why do I, think fast and all that kind of stuff, right? And want to talk. It's not that there's something wrong with me. Maybe there is on another level, but it's something that I can work with now, right?
Yeah.
Something that I can do something with. okay, if I'm going to be fire, then I'm going to, embrace the workouts and know that there's nothing wrong with me, that I want to be physically active all the time, and things like that, right? Or, the way I think as well, right? Trying to find different perspectives, different approaches. It certainly is consistent with, somebody that's got that fire, but also, the air that, to find always to go in a direction where there's that harmony too, right? I want you to talk a little bit about, nature, the cycles of nature, because that's Ayurveda is all about that too. And we're going to have our guest Leslie on our next podcast, and she's going to really dive deep into that. She's an expert in cycles and seasons and cycles and stuff like that. But the reason I ask is because we have, cycles. We were just complaining about, how the moon is making us feel like, it's taking that energy away from us, and sometimes it gives us the energy. But we're also, the first time I heard about this, talking about the seasons within a person is Anthony Robbins, and he got it from somebody else, I believe, Jim Rohn. And he talks about how, you have your winter and you have your spring and your summer. So your winter would be when, you're not, maybe you're just trying to save some energy, you're just trying to, figure things out. Maybe you're not as productive, right? In your life, you're a little bit more, a time for you to reflect and take stock of what's going on. And then your spring, you're starting to come out, you become more social and then you become more productive, that kind of thing, right? So we all have seasons. How does that, what's Ayurveda's perspective on that?
Yeah, so with Ayurveda, just like everything in our existence is the doshas. So even the ritucharyas, which is the seasonal changes, there's doshas attached to that. So for instance, spring for a kapha like me, because I am earth and water, so I'm heavy, I'm dense. If I don't move, I'm just going to become lethargic, lazy. And so when there's a lot of moisture, humidity, rain, it can bring me down. It actually brings up a lot of imbalances for me. So knowing how to navigate through that is really important through the seasons. And it's also very much, it's crucial to actually 5 days before the junction of the seasons to do a nice cleanse, because you're going into a new season and you don't want to bring the old season with you. So Pitta, for instance, is fire, right? It's fire energy, so summer. And that's not a good time for Pittas, because you guys don't like the heat, right? And so I don't like dampness because I am naturally damp.
Yeah,
so
and I hate
humidity, dampness,
for me, it should be
rain,
zero humidity too.
I can't deal,
the
right?
windier and warmer, because it's got to be warm too, but and a little bit cool, but the windier the better, right?
Yeah. So again, the great thing about Ayurveda, everything is the doshas, everything is the elements, the time of workout, the type of workout, what you're going to eat, the temperature of that, what you're going to, your hair, how to keep your beauty routine, your voice, the way you walk, the way you talk, everything has a dosha to it. So it's really cool. And again, not one size fits all. So that's really important. Just like with yoga, I know when you go into a studio, you have a great instructor that's guiding you, which is really good. Whenever I'm guiding a class, I always like to personalize, because I do offer personalized yoga for people. Because I'll see, if someone's a Vata, I'm not going to tell them you're going to do vinyasa flow after flow after flow. No, they need more grounding, right? Someone like a kapha like me, we need the flow. We need the movement, right? So, yeah, the seasons, going back to the seasons is very important. Yeah.
I love that. I mean, I see with my martial arts, right? And I mean, martial arts comes from, the same Indian tradition, right? I mean, it all came from there. Buddhism.
Yeah.
It's,
it's all connected,
Indian culture, basically, Indian spirituality and physical practices to the rest of the East, right? Japan, no different from that. And so, in the DNA of martial arts, right, is that the same understanding. But I personally, I could be standing, beside the same person, with the same rank, right, black belt, whatever it is, the same amount of time, same amount of, physical capabilities and all that. But I approach my training completely different because I need to put everything through my filter, which is my intellect, right? And make it make sense there before I can execute, right? And
that's
when I
very
do,
pitta of
then,
you.
it comes. And it's not necessarily strategic, right? It's not strategic thinking like a fighter or anything like that, although that's part of it. But I see how other people are just, they can just go without going through that process.
Yeah.
And it works better for them, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that certainly, like the pitta, so a very well balanced pitta as yourself, because you are, and I'm not just saying that because I love you and you're my life partner. A balanced pitta, they're genius. They're very highly intellectual.
Oh, no, I'm really liking this.
They have to know the why. It can't just be, oh, okay, we're going to do A, B, and C. Let's go. It's hold on. Wait, how did we get to B? What happens with C? And after that, like, you have to pittas. They need to know everything, and they do. They're very smart, and they're usually a medium build. Their presence, they take on. If they walk into a room, their presence, just everyone's turning around to look at them, right? Just like this podcast, you're more of the talker, the thinker. I'm more of the intuitive, the feeler. So that's a kapha trait. So the way I think is much slower, and I'm also very intuitive and energetically. So for me, when I'm talking to someone, I'm feeling them, which I know a lot of people think that's very airy-fairy, but there is something with that. For me, at least, like I'll feel them, I'll feel their energy. I'm listening to them. I take a little bit longer to process.
If you don't mind me interrupting, some people do think it's airy fairy if you're trying to force it, right? If I'm trying to approach every interaction like that, I'm going to feel your energy. Yeah, that sounds really phony, right?
No, I never say, by the way, this is your energy. No, it's
that's just very phony stuff, right?
Yeah. And so Avata, like you were saying, someone that's go. That's the way they think. That's the way they approach life, right? So, yeah, I find with Ayurveda, with yoga, knowing the practice that's meant for you, knowing, the face yoga that you need, the beauty care that you would benefit from, knowing, again, what to eat, where to eat, how to eat, time to eat. I find for myself, for the last, I don't know how long now, that I've been practicing this, I'm more aware and more at peace, and I don't find struggle to the day-to-day. And I think that's really important, because I think a lot of people are struggling mentally, physically, energetically, and Ayurveda can teach you so much about yourself on how to navigate the world with your dosha, where you're to be, and your passions, everything to do with Ayurveda.
I love it.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And that's really what it's all about, right? It's and that's why a lot of people gravitate towards, that's what they call the Eastern philosophies, Eastern ways of thinking. That it's more about, congruent. Like it's more about, a very balanced, a very harmonious way to live.
Yeah.
But it starts with reacquainting yourself with your own self, right?
Yeah.
And being able to break that alienation. It might always be happening in some ways, but if you can minimize that and get back in touch with yourself and understand who you are. I mean, all wisdom, whether it's Eastern wisdom or ancient Greece wisdom, is know thyself, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't just mean be super aware and critical of yourself. It means accept yourself as well. It means welcome yourself back home, right?
Yeah.
Be in harmony with yourself, right? Because in the end, that's all you got when we came to this world and when we leave, right?
Yeah.
And I think Ayurveda and for sure yoga practice like that definitely succeed in doing that, right? And so it is so needed. Again, I think science is not everything, I have such a problem with that, what people say. And Well, when you bring science into the equation, then every problem is solved. Absolutely the opposite of science.
Yeah.
The more you bring science into the equation, the more problems you present, which is the idea of science, right? That there's a further question, another question that comes up from that, right?
Yeah.
So it's a never-ending process of understanding things, right? But this is different because this is understanding, but using that understanding immediately to be able to apply it so that the harmony can be, can be built, right? And that's what I love about Ayurveda and yoga. I know we probably have to, talk about yoga, particularly maybe during another podcast. But yeah, I just wanted to know, because for people that don't know, right? So, most people, including myself, I would just say, oh, sure, I'm going to get into yoga, and I would just go to any yoga studio or take any type of yoga class, right? But there's different types of, yoga. It's just like there's different types of martial arts, taekwondo, karate, judo, and stuff like that. What is just to give me a brief description of the difference between Hatha Yoga, for example, and
so Hatha Yoga is taken from the classical yoga. So it's, the 108 postures that you can practice. It comes from Ashtanga Yoga, which is like the yoga, where it's a lot to do with philosophy, a lot to do with, the postures. There's certain postures that you do. There's also hot yoga, which I'm not keen on. I know I used to teach it, and I find that it's where I used to teach way back in the day. There was always a 30-day challenge. And I thought, 30-day challenge? Like, you're asking people to come into hot yoga every day. Hot yoga isn't about losing weight, people. It's not about sweating. Yeah, you're sweating, but you're also, causing more issues with your organs. Like it's yoga isn't just superficial. Like there's postures to massage your intestines. If you're doing this in the heat every day, it's not ideal. But yeah, so there's moksha yoga, which is a form of hot yoga. There's a yoga for everyone. So for instance, I would never recommend a pitta do the hot yoga.
Right.
But I find there's a lot of pitta women that are like, no, it's all in or nothing.
Yeah, it's associated with heat, associated with good stuff, of course, but also with
I want to
weight
sweat.
loss, right?
Yeah, weight loss. I want to sweat. Yeah. I can't just leave feeling good, right?
Just remind me of, and I know people. I used to have friends, even when I was younger, as a teenager. I used to have a friend that used to come and join us sometimes for training, and he used to go jogging with us, and he would wrap a garbage bag around his mid-size, and I thought, man, I would definitely die, and it could be dangerous, right? But it's equated with the more sweat, the more calories you burn, hence the fitter you're going to be, and that's absolutely
So there's various yoga practices you can partake in. It's just, again, knowing what yoga. So for instance, I'm a kapha. I need movement. As you know, I like to wake up early. Yoga, I like to go to the gym first thing. Like, it's really important for me to have movement in the morning. And the reason for that is I know that if I don't, I'm happy to stay on the couch and just binge watch or just research and just sit there, which is not ideal. I need movement. I need that to stimulate my mind, right? So a person like me, I need the vinyasa flow, which is constant flow. So I always do the sun salutations. Again, for a vata, they need more grounding, right? Pitta, they don't need hot yoga. Yeah, so I always say, because I know a lot of pittas, they'll say to me, oh yeah, I've never tried yoga before, but I'm going to do the hot yoga. It's like, you got to learn how to walk before you run a marathon, right? And I always tell them that. But again, it's very much pitta, like all or nothing. So just knowing your prakriti, which is your born constitution, your dosha, is so important with every aspect of your existence.
I love it, and so I want to just share with people my personal experience. And it just sounds like, of course, you're my partner, and I love you, and I love being with you, and promote your ideas and everything that you do, particularly what you do with your coaching practice. But I have to tell you, I mean, this might sound like a testimonial, but this is something that I have really benefited from because, as you know, I'm a martial artist. I've been really good at it. I've been good at other sports. I try to, when I embark on a journey, whatever it is, learning something, I try to excel at it, right? I try to be good at it, at least having a good grasp on things, right? With the same thing with music and everything. But sometimes my mind has so many things going that, and I try to excel that, sometimes I feel that it's a little bit too much. So instead of sometimes I feel overwhelmed, but for me, the side effect of my effort to do something well and many different things and to try to bring them together creates something that's called anxiety, right? Or angst, as I like to refer to. And so that comes with it's just part of me, right? And it's not something that I used to see it as, I guess an illness, a disease, something that I need to get rid of. But now I understand that it's part of me, right? And if I go back to my philosophers, like Sorensen used to say that, freedom or anxiety is the byproduct of freedom, right? The dizziness of freedom, he used to call it, right? And so the more free that you think you are because you're trying to do different things, the more you become anxious. But with you and just you being with me and offering that understanding of the doshas and understanding, it just really helped me understand how everything can come together in harmony and how I can forgive myself a little bit more for being anxious and wanting to do stuff, right? And wanting to move. And so I don't see movement anymore as like, oh, maybe something wrong with me.
Yeah.
But I see it now as something that I can harness so that I can actually make it into something better, right?
Yeah.
To really take advantage of it. And that I owe that to you because you've really been able to to help me with that, with your awesome understanding of Ayurveda and yoga, right?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. And it wasn't like a far stretch for me because, again, being familiar with martial arts and philosophy and all that, it wasn't that, but I needed that sort of system that would help me put it together, right?
Yeah.
And it's been really beneficial. So
Yeah.
thank you very much for it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So we need to continue this conversation.
I'd love
Can
to.
you please, maybe...
I'll be here.
Yeah, you'll be here, right? So
Yeah.
and maybe we can talk a little bit more about yoga and, of course, Ayurveda. And,
Sounds
I
good.
would love to continue the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.